Every morning she moved through her home as if it were a stage set. Her hands folded the laundry, washed the dishes, and prepared a simple meal. Her feet shuffled across the worn wooden floors, and her eyes scanned the walls filled with memories. Yet no sound emerged from her lips, not a word of greeting, not a murmur of prayer, not even a sigh loud enough to disturb the silence. Years of grief had made speaking seem unnecessary, even impossible. Her voice had become a ghost, fading with every lonely day. Even the birds outside seemed to notice her quiet, chirping softly as though afraid to break the stillness. And she moved through the world like a shadow, present yet unnoticed, her life wrapped in an invisible shroud of silence. The furniture remained the same, the table, the chairs, the old rocking chair by the window, all familiar, all unchanged. Yet the rooms felt hollow. Echoes of laughter and conversation from years past had faded into whispers too faint to remember. Even photographs on the walls seemed to reflect her solitude, faces smiling at her, yet silent, distant, untouchable. She walked slowly from room to room, each step sounding softer than the one before. The house seemed to mourn with her, absorbing her quiet grief and returning it tenfold. She touched objects, small reminders of love and life, and the silence around them swallowed every sound she made. Her home was full of things, but utterly empty of life. The days bled one into another. Morning light crept through the curtains, but it did not awaken hope. Evenings dragged slowly across the floor, casting long, unbroken shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly into corners where darkness lived. She rose, she moved, she ate, she sat, but the world remained muted as though time itself had paused and left her alone in its stillness. The silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, pressing against her chest, filling her mind with the absence of words, of laughter, of recognition. She often wished for a sound, any sound, even just the murmur of life to remind her she was not entirely invisible. Her sorrow had grown too deep for words. She had learned to carry it alone, hidden beneath her stillness, buried behind careful routines. No one knew the night she cried silently in bed, the hours spent staring at ceilings, the prayers she could not speak aloud. Even family, when they visited, saw only a quiet figure, composed and polite. They did not see the ache that trembled in her chest, the regret, the loneliness, the yearning for comfort. Her pain was like a secret river, flowing deep and unseen, its current strong enough to wear away hope, yet hidden beneath a calm surface. She believed no one could reach it, no one except him. Days passed without conversation. The phone rarely rang. Letters arrived less often. Even familiar faces seemed distant, almost strangers. She saw neighbors walking by, their laughter drifting through the walls, but she never called out. She did not know how. Or perhaps she simply did not want to. Her children visited sometimes, but their lives were full, their schedules busy. She was left alone again, returning to the quiet that had become her companion. Her isolation was not a choice. It had grown naturally, like a vine curling around a forgotten fence, and yet even in this solitude, something invisible lingered, something patient, waiting for the first moment she might notice. Each word felt heavy. Even simple greetings seemed to demand more courage than she could muster. She had learned that speaking might awaken grief or reveal her emptiness to the world, and so she remained silent, even as thoughts crowded her mind, even as memories pressed against her heart. The fear of stirring what had been buried kept her lips closed, her voice locked in a cage of caution. Years of unspoken sorrow had taught her that silence could be safer than words. And yet, somewhere in that silence, a gentle presence waited, one that could hear even the words she did not say. She moved like a shadow through her home, folding clothes, arranging dishes, sweeping the floor, every action careful, deliberate, quiet. Her steps made no sound. Her voice was still. Even her thoughts seemed muted, as if the silence around her had absorbed them. The world outside moved on, but she remained, a figure of calm and stillness, almost invisible. And in the pattern of her quiet life, she felt the weight of every year she had endured alone. Yet the habit of stillness had also created space, a space where something new could enter, where he could speak, even when the world did not. The nights were long, endless. Darkness pressed against the windows, and the house felt impossibly vast. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting breaths, counting memories, counting the empty hours until dawn. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional creak of the floorboards or the whisper of the wind outside. Sleep came reluctantly, and even dreams were quiet, subdued, as if her soul had forgotten how to speak. And in those still, shadowed hours, she felt both the weight of the world and the possibility of something unseen, a whisper waiting to break the silence. One night, as she lay in her chair, the silence felt different, softer, warmer, almost alive. She didn't hear a sound with her ears. She didn't see a light with her eyes, but somewhere deep in her chest, a gentle stirring awoke, like the first breeze of spring slipping through the cracks. It was not loud, it was not urgent, it was simply there. A presence waiting patiently, quietly offering a hand to a soul that had long forgotten how to reach. Her heartbeat slowed, her mind quieted, and for the first time in years she felt someone near who could carry the weight of her silence. It came as a thought, then as a whisper in her mind. "I am with you." She blinked, startled. Was it her imagination? Her loneliness playing tricks? The voice did not demand attention. It was calm, soft, tender, like a parent speaking to a child afraid of the dark. She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling warmth spreading across her ribs. It was real, not imagined, not a memory. The voice belonged to the one who had always been near, even when she could not see him. And in that instant, her long-held silence felt safe, welcomed, and held. She had closed herself off for so long. Fear, grief, and loneliness had built walls around her heart. Now she leaned into the whisper, not asking, not demanding, simply listening. Every heartbeat became a prayer, every breath a conversation. For the first time, she realized she could hear without speaking, and in that quiet listening, she felt understood in ways words could never achieve. The presence was not distant, not cold, not judging. It was near, steady, and alive, filling every corner of her silent soul. Her heart began to stir with recognition. He had never left her, even when her lips had been mute for years. The tears came slowly, silently, but they carried decades of sorrow. She wept for the nights she had spent alone, for the weight of words never spoken, for the loneliness she had carried silently. Each drop was a prayer. Each sigh, a conversation with the one who had been listening all along. Her grief, long locked inside, finally found a voice. And the more she wept, the lighter her heart became. The silence that had once imprisoned her was now a sacred space, a place where her pain could meet his presence and be transformed into peace. She no longer feared the tears. They were not weakness. They were communion. The next morning, she opened her mouth to say something, a greeting, a question, a whisper. Her voice shook. It was faint, almost a breath, but it was real. For the first time in years, she spoke aloud, and the sound felt like a miracle. She did not have to summon courage for long. The presence that had been near her all along made her words flow naturally, softly, steadily. Even a small phrase, "Good morning, Lord," felt weighty with hope, as if decades of silence were being lifted in that single breath. And she realized she had not lost the ability to speak. She had simply forgotten the joy of being heard. From that day forward, her words multiplied. She spoke quietly into the morning light, to the walls, to the empty chairs, to the sky. But she knew it was not empty. Her words were met with a presence gentle, tender, listening. She shared her fears, her grief, her quiet joys, even the simplest thoughts she had once believed too small for prayer. And he answered, not in thunder or flash, but in the steady reassurance that filled her chest and made her soul rest. The dialogue became natural, not forced, not hurried, but intimate, like old friends reunited. And in every conversation, she felt herself returning to life, to hope, to the one who had never left. She began to notice small changes in her surroundings. The sunlight seemed brighter, the air softer, even the shadows on the walls carried a gentle glow. Her home, once heavy with absence, felt alive with the quiet movement of his presence. Tasks she had long performed robotically, sweeping, cooking, folding laundry, now felt infused with purpose. Even the smallest corners of the house seemed to breathe along with her, responding to the life that had quietly returned. The silence was no longer oppressive. It was a vessel of grace, a sacred space where she and Jesus could speak and the world outside could wait. Her steps, once tentative and slow, now held a quiet confidence. Even her hands, long, stiff and careful, moved with an ease she had not known in years. She noticed the rhythm in everyday tasks, a dance in sweeping the floor, a song in folding clothes, a whisper of joy in preparing a simple meal. Her movements no longer betrayed exhaustion or despair. They reflected a heart that had been held, heard, and restored. In every gesture, every breath, she discovered the tender work of Jesus, remaking not the world, but the soul that had been silent too long. The days no longer pressed heavily on her shoulders. Even in the stillness of her home, she felt a calm she had not known in decades. Her heart no longer raced with longing or fear. The silence, once a prison, had become a sanctuary. She would sit by the window and watch the world move, not feeling invisible or forgotten, but part of a rhythm greater than herself. The quiet no longer threatened, it nurtured. And in that peaceful stillness, she discovered the joy of simply being present, being heard, being loved. Even when the world remained silent, her heart knew she was never alone. Each morning carried tiny miracles, the scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, a bird landing near her garden, sunlight breaking through clouds in golden streaks. She noticed them, she felt them. She thanked God for them aloud, and sometimes she smiled softly at the sheer gift of life. Joy had returned, not in loud bursts, but in quiet, simple moments. Even the mundane became precious. Folding laundry, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, all were acts filled with gratitude. She realized life was alive again, even in ways she had long overlooked. One afternoon she paused, placing her hands over her chest, feeling a warmth that went deeper than the skin. It was then that she recognized the truth. This restoration, this quiet peace, this newfound joy, it had not come by chance. Jesus had been present all along, praying, comforting, sustaining her, even when she had not dared to speak. All the days of silence, all the nights of solitude were filled with his love, unseen but faithful. She whispered softly, "Thank you for never leaving me, Lord." And she knew the silence had not been empty. It had been preparation. When her life on earth came to its gentle close, she stepped into eternity without fear. She was met by the one who had spoken to her heart when no one else could. The silence that had once seemed endless now became a sacred dialogue, unbroken, eternal. Her soul, once closed and silent, now laughed, sang, and rejoiced in communion. Even in heaven, her story speaks to those who suffer in quiet that Jesus always finds the silent heart, and when he speaks, it is enough. Her life became a testament. No silence is too deep, no grief too long, for his voice to reach and restore.